be having a more in-depth webinar coming up later in July, where we'll kind of go things more in depth, go over setup and things like that. So we'll be, you guys can keep an eye out for that, but we'll mention some more details here later in the presentation. So we'll start out with, I just want to just briefly mention the home page. If any of you watching aren't aware, if you don't actually come to the home page on a regular basis, you should try at least once a week. You know, for example, we were advertising this webinar today was here, as well as new things that we've been posting and new videos show up here. So if you don't on a regular basis, it's good just to check out what's new on this homepage to be aware of things like today that are coming down the line. So I'm going to start out. We'll go to the time approval page here. Now, one of the things that hopefully you all notice is this is actually a live site. It is a test site, but it is a live site. It's running on the same web servers and database that all of your live sites are running on. So hopefully you can notice right from the beginning of how fast this is. When we're dealing with all these pages we're showing you, we really took a lot of time to focus on performance to both on the front end mostly, but also some improvements on the back end to improve performance. For those of you that read the forum article on today's presentation, these updates are purely front end. This is a front end rebuild. So what that means is you're going to see some new look and feel to the web pages, but it's all plugged into the same back end. So there's no change here as far as configuration is concerned, or your payroll data. All of that remains unaffected. This is basically the equivalent of having like a new mobile app, so to speak, that it's all plugged into the same back end. This is just a new way of plugging into that same back end. So one of the things that you'll notice that I want to show you here is that the height of our list on our time approval page is now snapped to the height of your window. So if I change my browser window here, you'll see how it gets smaller or bigger based on how big my browser window is, and thus people on larger monitors, if they make the window bigger, they'll be able to see more information. So you know, as they're scrolling through that, they'll be able to see as much information, you know, as they can based on how big their monitor is. So the other thing we have here is we've started introducing these notions of user photos and employee photos into the system. So on the time approval page, we'll show all of your employee photos. These are sample photos. You actually won't see these. These are just some characters we created to demonstrate photos on our demo site. But what you can do is these photos are actually clickable. And so if you click on these, it will pull up employee information where you'll see the photo. You can click to upload a photo if you want, but you'll also see all the information about the employee contact information. If you have an employee here who they haven't filled out their time and you want to call them up or email them, you can just click on that and it'll quickly give you that information on where to contact them. So the other thing that we have new here is we do have a new quick view here, and so this is very similar to things. Any of you who are currently using our new field reports product, this will look very similar to that. It's also very similar to the labor detail we've had out for a while now. So that's something new that we'll have there. Also, it has a search that you can search things. And those who have been using our new field reports, as I go through these pages, you'll notice a common, it'll seem familiar because it's the same kind of look and feel that we are now rolling out to all of our products. So field reports was the first one to kind of get this new look and feel, and then we shifted over to payroll. So as you're already comfortable with, we have daily comments here as well. And then you can view all of those. So not a whole lot different there. But then one thing we did do here that was a pretty big change is we got rid of the tabular view of the pay type totals. And that was mainly because a lot of companies, they only have a handful of pay types, but there's also a significant amount of companies out there who they have a lot of pay types. And so it became very problematic to display pay types in a tabular view for those companies because some pay types are used by some employees and not others, and so you basically can't fit a column for every single pay type when you look at the sum of all pay types that are being used by all the employees. So in order to show more information and better information, we got rid of the tabular view, and as you can see here now, we simply just show all of the pay types that that one employee has. So for example, this Terry Brock employee here, he has a sick pay type here, but it only shows up for him. That pay type doesn't show up for other employees. These are no longer have any limits now. So going forward, any pay type that that employee has time coded to will show up here. It is not limited to 8 or fewer pay types as has been on the previous page. The other thing you'll notice is that we are showing the pay type abbreviations here as well. So that's something that I think also will make it easier to read and comprehend this information, is because we're actually showing the abbreviation of the pay type along with the number, so that you don't have to, as you're scrolling through, you don't have to try and remember what each box refers to. It's now written right there. And as you'll see, it also has the mouse over. If you want the full description, you'll see it in the mouse over. And then we also will show the full descriptions and codes down here along with the coloring as well. So next I'll show you the filters. These filters are basically the same ones as you have currently. We will probably expand these filters in the future, but to start out, we just have feature parity with the existing one. But all that's changed is that filter button is moved, so it's now on the left up here to get that. And then we've moved all of the transactional buttons that used to be down here at the bottom. We moved those up here. So you have your promote all, approve all, reclaim all. These are going to work in the context of whatever's currently being viewed here. So right now I'm viewing all employees in the company, but let's say I just wanted to approve a single payroll group. I could click on that payroll group over here, and then I could just approve, reclaim, or promote those employees in that payroll group rather than all employees at once. So before we had the buttons down here and the buttons over here. We basically combined those now because it was a bit redundant, and so we have them here, and it will simply work based on whatever context is that you have over here on the right-hand side. The other thing we have here is, so we've moved the pay period locking, as you noticed here. So the pay period lock button that used to be down here is now up here. So you can just click that to easily lock and unlock your payroll period. These buttons over here are all the same as they currently are. We have the Excel button. Now what is changing, as is kind of the larger point for this webinar today, is this button will no longer be used for exporting. That will be done through the export menu. This button will still be here, but this will just be to get the normal Excel file for the labor detail report. We'll also have the PDF timesheets. Now this will be the new PDF timesheet. So we are making obsolete the current functionality that basically gives you these printed timesheets in an Excel file. That is going to be going away. We will not be having that anymore. Everything will be the current PDF timesheets that you currently have available to you in your payroll menu. And so this button will then be a quick link to generate those printed timesheets. And then we will continue to have the email button that will send out all the approvers in your company. Will send them an email digest of the time in their payroll groups and jobs. And then we have some settings which I will show you here in a minute. And then we have just a refresh button if for any reason you want to get updated numbers. If you're waiting on the guys in the field to get their time in and approve it, you can just come hit it here and refresh to get the new information. So that basically covers everything on the time approval page. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'll just click on one of the employees to go ahead and open up a timesheet. So again, hopefully you're noticing the speed and performance with which we have engineered this new system. And one of the other things you'll notice is that if I already have a timesheet open, let's say I have perhaps split monitors, and I have my timesheet window on one monitor and my time approval screen on the other monitor. If I click from employee to employee, it doesn't actually. You can either open that up in a new tab, or what you can do is we've introduced a shift key that you can hold down and hit shift and then click on it. And oh, sorry, that we're still working on the bugs on all this, just so you know. But we'll do it so that it actually opens it up in the same window rather than having to continue opening more windows. Now, on the new timesheet, I'll show you again that this is snapped to the height of the browser. So for people with smaller browsers, I'm on a laptop here. So, but people on perhaps have larger monitors, they'll be able to see as many rows as basically the size of their window can support. So the other thing, one of the things we've done here on the new timesheet is we've tried to, we got together and we looked at all the elements on the timesheet page, and we basically asked ourselves, okay, well, what's most important here? What are the things that are clicked on most commonly versus the things that are clicked on less commonly in the typical workflow? The other thing we wanted to do is make it a little less intimidating for your end users, your field guys, for new companies that are coming on in training or just new employees that are coming on. We wanted to make it less intimidating. And so to make things less intimidating, we want to kind of not have things on the page that don't absolutely have to be there. So one of the things we've done is you used to have the tab on the top between weekly and daily. We moved that now into a toggle here. So we have this icon that you can click, and then you can decide if you want to do weekly or daily. Now those will be saved as user settings, so that every time you come back to the timesheet, if you're a user who prefers to use the daily timesheet, then it will just always take you to the daily timesheet. Now, the next thing I'll show you is that we have all new pick lists. Again, if you're using our current field reports product, this will be very familiar to you because these are all the same type of style of pick lists now that we're introducing across the product. Now, in our employee pick list here, one of the things that we did to kind of improve the workflow and make it shorter is before you had the icon that you had to click in order to add and remove employees from the payroll group. We've simplified that now where by default you're viewing the employees that are in this group. But if I had, let's say, a new hire or someone is on needs to come into, I need to code payroll time for him for the group, I can change the filter to show all employees just like you're familiar to in the existing system. But what we've done now is you don't actually have to actually do anything to explicitly add him to the group. If you grab an employee who's not already in your payroll group to code time to them, we just automatically add that employee to the group for you. So it's just an extra step that we eliminated that your users don't have to do anymore. Now, if you want to remove employees from the group or just manually add them, we still have the button like has typically been on the daily timesheet that's always there, that you can just click that, this member button here, and then it will give you a screen to add and remove. Now, something that is nice about this is we made it very easy here to add and remove people. We basically have we show who the employees are at the top, and then if you scroll down, we'll show the rest of the employees who aren't in your group. So adding employees to the group is quite easy. You can just go click, click, click. To remove employees, the same. You can just go click, 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 or you can search them, and when you search, it will search either list. So hopefully that's a view that will, again, speed up the workflow. Now, the other thing we have is our pay period select. One of the things we've done here is we still continue to just show you a list of pay periods, but we've also introduced the lock icon so that those of you who lock pay periods, it will now show here, this icon will turn gold when you lock a pay period, so you'll just get a visual indication that that pay period is locked. But those who want to code future time periods, let's say it's a holiday next week or someone's going on vacation, they can select to future pay periods, and then it will change. It'll show you weeks in the future that you can select. It only shows you a limit. You know, you can't go 6 months in the future, but it'll show you the upcoming weeks if you're going on vacation or whatnot and you want to code time to a future pay period. So that also makes it a little easier, whereas before you had to use the custom dates to manually do a date in the future. You won't need to do that anymore. So some of the other functionalities that we have here that we used to have at the top right, we've now moved into this secondary menu. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be introducing some new user settings to make this more tailored fit. Now, right now, I have the member management icon showing here, but we're actually going to make a user setting so that each user can make whatever icon be here they most want to use. If they commonly use the Quick Look or the Excel or the PDF, they can, or even just a refresh, they can put any one of those as the main icon there. But what I'll do is I'll open up the user settings because I want to show you some of the new settings we have. So first of all, users can come in and they can specify some of the settings that have already existed, but users may not have actually realized that these existed if they weren't familiar with them. But for starters, there's the view that I mentioned earlier where they'll be able to come in and specify whether they want to use the weekly timesheet by default or the daily timesheet by default. The other one they'll have is they can specify whether when they come in for the first time, do they want to have the web page show them the current pay period, the current calendar week, or if they want to see the previous calendar week. So people who always enter in their time every day, like they should be doing, hint, hint, they may select to view the current pay period when they come in because they're entering their time as they go. Those who tend to fill in their time for the previous week after the fact, they can select the previous pay period so that that's what comes up by default. Additionally, we're exposing some of the PDF timesheet options, such as whether we're grouping PDFs by employees or by job, and whether we're sorting by employee name, number, job name, number. So those are basically just quick access to those PDF timesheets if they use that PDF button that I just showed you a moment ago. Some of the new ones that we're showing, though, is we're going to be introducing these user settings. For each of the coding types that we have available in our system, a user will be able to indicate whether they want that visible or hidden. And that may just be, there may be coding types that are available to use to that user, but perhaps that user rarely, if ever, uses them. And so in that case, they can make it hidden so that that doesn't come up when they click the button to add the codes to the time card. Now, one other aspect of that, I don't want any of the payroll managers out there worrying about that guys are going to hide their jobs and start coding without jobs. That's not actually what this can do. We're going to, in addition to this, we're going to be introducing new settings on the payroll group that says things are required. So one of the new features of this is going to be that you will be able to, on the payroll group setup, a payroll manager will be able to go in and say that specifying a job is required, specifying a cost code is required. Or specifying if you've selected a job, then you have to specify a cost code. Anytime that's the case, these user settings will be trumped. So the group setting will always the payroll group setting will always trump the user setting. So even if a user has come in here and said hide certified classes, if the manager has gone in and said certified classes is required, this setting will be ignored. So so that's one way that that users and managers can kind of use those in conjunction with each other. So the other thing you'll notice here is we do have the employee photos that we've introduced. We now have them available here at the top left. If you click on that employee, again, you see the same screen that we showed you on the time approval page. But this is also somewhere if employees do self-entry, an employee can come in here and upload the photo themselves so that someone in the office doesn't necessarily have to do that. If they have one available, they can upload it that way. The other thing I will briefly indicate that's going to be here, we're in the process of adding it now, is we will have the employee default codings available in this screen. So if your employees are set up in your accounting system with a default certified class or a default union class, default equipment, any of those defaults, we will actually be showing them in this employee info screen as well. That's available here as well as on the time approval page. So if that's of importance when any of your people are coding payroll time, that will be there available as well. The other thing you'll notice is that we have these previous and next buttons on the pay periods here, the dates at the top. So users now, they don't even have to use this pay period select if they don't want to. They can actually just click the forward and next button, and they can easily move between pay periods that way. Now, by default, we have the approve button here because that is the most important button. But then we have the others available here. So if you ever clear the time card, autofill, move copy, promote, denial, or reclaim, those are all available here in this secondary menu. Now, one of the things I will show you that we're introducing here is on the move, we're introducing some new functionality here where you will be able to specify whether you want to move the daily comments, the attendance, and unit details if those are used and specified. When you move time, you'll be able to specify if you want to move those as well with the time. So you'll be able to use those in accordance with whatever the person is doing. Same thing with copy time. You can see what we have here is we'll be able to say whether we want to copy the comments, the attendance, and the unit details from this employee, and then you can just go down here in this checklist and check all the employees in that group that you want to copy that data to. So that's also some new functionality. So those of you that use the code search on the timesheet, what you'll notice is it's still there, but this basically, we came up with this idea that's very similar to what Apple does in iOS, is I've got my view here that's scrollable, but look what happens when I scroll up, there's the search. So very reminiscent of how Apple does lists and does the search at the top if you simply scroll up. So there's your keyword search. If you're accustomed to using that to search for jobs and codes within the timesheet, it's right there. Also, the status filter that we've had on the timesheet before, that's there as well. If you want to filter it just down to time that's ready, unapproved, approved, that's there as well. So by default, when the timesheet loads, it's just pushed off to the top. But all the user has to do is scroll up, and then that becomes available. And again, I want to just briefly mention the performance, because again, as we can see here, this is a fairly decently sized timesheet that we have here. But when I hit the refresh button, that is actually going to our servers and getting all that information and returning it. So I really think everyone will notice a drastic improvement in performance when we start rolling this out. Just to indicate, we do plan to start rolling this out to beta around the end of July. We are currently at the end of wrapping up development on this and moving into the QA stage. So throughout the month, the rest of June and the month of July, we'll be QAing this. We do have full-time QA staff here at hh2, and so they basically will be spending a significant amount of time over the coming month QAing this very much, because with payroll we don't want to take any chances. We want to make sure it's bulletproof as possible before we start rolling it out to real world. So we will be doing a full month of QA before we even start doing beta rollouts to actual live customers. So the next thing I'll show is the add to timesheets overlay here. So functionality-wise, there really isn't anything new to go over here. Any codes that are set up to be coded to by the payroll group will be here. This is where that user setting of where something is hidden or visible applies to, though. Again, if a company uses lots and lots of code types that are optional, but that specific user doesn't use any of them, he can hide them. One thing we have added, though, is the unspecified button. You'll be able to, rather than having it be implicit on whether or not you're doing unspecified, now we're actually giving you a button to indicate if you want to do the unspecified. The other thing we'll be letting you do here is we'll let you add batches that you can, if you're adding a whole bunch of jobs at once, you can specify everything you need, and then we have a new batch here where you can add that batch of the timesheet and it clears all these out so you can add more. It's basically the equivalent of the plus more button that currently exists on this screen. It's basically the same thing, it's just moved up here to the top right. And then, of course, we have when everything's done, you can hit the button to add things to the timesheet. I won't give a demonstration of this functionality yet because we're just wrapping up development kind of on this week, so we're not really in a place where we can show a real-world example of doing this. But that will be something we'll heavily show in the next webinar we do on this later in July. So in addition to that, those companies who use attendance will still be here in the same place. Again, we don't have that turned on here on this demo site. We're just wrapping up the development on that. Daily comments, we still have, that's basically the same place as before, same functionality. So no real functionality here other than we do show you kind of the information on what you were typing in for. And then saving time, again, nothing really new there. I'll just show you an example what we do there. We do some new highlighting, though. You can see where we kind of flash the grand total when we enter in new time. The other thing that I'll just briefly mention is you'll notice the buttons here. We've kind of made some bigger buttons that will actually spell out the entire word rather than use abbreviation. Hopefully that makes things a little bit more clear and intuitive as far as what they do. The other thing that I'll show you is if I select a pay type group, we have a special one here that we kind of have a lot of pay types too. So when you have a pay type group with lots of pay types, you can kind of see what the buttons do. In order to visually group things better, the buttons will increase to take the same height as whatever that row is on the timesheet. So that should make things a little bit more intuitive as far as what you're looking at. So now that's basically everything on the weekly time card. I'll switch over the daily time card here just to kind of show that. So again, one of the new features here on the daily timesheet is we really want to start emphasizing the use of these photos. And some of you may be wondering why we're pushing the photos in that way, you know, after all this isn't Facebook or whatnot. But what that really comes down to is human beings are able to instantly recognize a face. It's what we've been evolutionarily hardwired for. A person can recognize a face instantly versus having to read their name or read their number on the screen. And so employee photos aren't really just one of those bells and whistles sort of things. It really is something, if you use it well, it's something that can greatly speed up the workflow because it allows you to instantly recognize who you are looking at and who you're dealing with rather than having to actually have your brain spend the time to read their name. So all of these employee photos up here are clickable, and that brings up the same employee information screen that we've seen before. But then we do show the employee number and the employee name on there as well. And then, of course, we have the previous and next buttons, just like you would be familiar with for those people who currently use the daily timesheet. And we do show the employee names up here, but just as kind of with the search, those scroll away because, you know, basically once you see those names, you really don't need them anymore. But if you do, we do have them available on the mouse over as well. And that's something I didn't mention on the weekly timesheet. But both the weekly and the daily timesheet, we now have these detailed mouse overs for every single box. This is something we weren't really able to do with the previous version, but we've now been able to kind of reintroduce that. Every single box, it shows you what group you're in. So for example, this job here, we have a lot of codes on this job. So if I scroll down, I no longer see what job I'm under. Well, the mouse overs will continue showing you the job that you're dealing with, as well as the employee column I'm on, the code row that I'm on, as well as the pay type that I'm currently in. So that's basically everything that's different on the daily timesheet. You do have the search and the filters there as well, and that basically takes me to my time of how much we wanted to cover as far as the new stuff. So again, I'll mention our next webinar is going to be July 23rd. That is again a Thursday, and that will be again at the same time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That one will probably be a little longer because what we're going to do with that one is we want to actually do that as if it were an implementation or a training, and we will actually go through all of the payroll setup because every page in the payroll system is getting a new page. So all of the setup, the payroll group setup, employee setup, job manager setup, user setup, all those have new pages that are coming out. And so we will go in depth onto all of those at that later webinar. You know, obviously you can see from, you know, we just took a half an hour just getting this brief overview. So we're really going to spend some time and get into depth on that one. So I encourage everyone who's a payroll manager who's interested on seeing those, go ahead and you know, keep an eye out for that. We will probably also break that up into some more field training where we get in depth on the time entry screen and time approval screen, and then we'll move into setup for those who that doesn't apply. Then you know, they don't have to stick around for that. So that same thing kind of applies to right now. We're basically done with showing off the new payroll stuff. What we're going to do now is we're going to send it back to Jason, and Jason's going to show the new export process. So anyone attending who is not a payroll manager, the rest really doesn't apply to them, so they're free to leave. We are recording this, so we will be posting it to our YouTube channel if anyone wants to review it later. Yeah, that basically covers everything for me. So Jason, you can go ahead and take it back.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. I'm very excited about the new time approval and timesheet screens, and we hope that you're excited as well. Many of the features that Kevin just demonstrated have come from you. We've listened to all of the enhancement requests that many of you have given us feedback on, and so again, we're excited to be rolling that out towards the end of July. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make me the presenter here, and I'll share my screen out now. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, so what I'm going to cover now is the new labor export screen. So any of you that have been familiar with the current labor export or time export out of hh2, that has been done on the time approval screen. You've gone in, you've done that under time approval here, and you would go under the Excel button to go in and do your export. We've actually been trying to notify all of you of the changes that are going to be coming out here soon. And we've been doing that under this Excel option on time approval. You'll notice that Kevin and his team have been putting out these warnings to let everybody know that there are some changes coming down. So you should be seeing this now. And this is good to go in here and check this out, because you can go in and review the article here. You can also go in and see a demonstration of the formal export. So this will be going away, and as Kevin Rabluski had mentioned previously, we will still keep the Excel button here, where you can go in and you can still run your formal export reports and dump the data out into Excel. Now what we're going to do is we are taking your format view that I've automatically set up for all of you when we have done implementations. We've converted those over into what we call an integration format. Basically, this integration format window is already set. This is not something that you'll have to go in and change. Your default order for exporting out your time is going to still stay the same in here. But it does give us some flexibility later on down the road to incorporate additional format views for additional types of reporting that may need to be done, or with third-party payroll providers like ADP and things like that, where we can export data out into different formats without interfering with your current format window that we use to import into Timberline. So I just wanted to point out that that's where this is, and we'll be giving some full demonstrations, including some tips and tricks on how to use these screens later on. Let's go into the new labor export and show you where that's done. So that's going to be accessed under the Remote Payroll button over on the far left. We've incorporated a new link called Labor Export. It's the third link down. It's right underneath your time approval screen. And by clicking on this screen, we are only going to be able to see the time that we've approved as payroll administrators. So that brings up a solid point, that you're not going to see your time entries for approval in this link here unless you've gone into time approval and you've approved time for the week that you're going to be exporting. This week right here that I'm on in our demo site just happens to be 6/22. Actually, I'm going to switch this from a daily view to a weekly view. So we'll go to 6/21, and we're going to go to 6/27. And you can see that I've got some time in here that's been approved that's actually green. Now, the time that's approved in here that's green and that's been finalized is the time that's going to be available to me to approve in the new labor export window. The great thing about the new labor export window, guys, is that you can not export out time a second go around after it's been if you previously exported it out, you can't export it out a second time unless you roll the time back into the system. This is going to help many of you work around some of the tips and tricks that I've shared with in regards to these statuses. In the past, for people that have biweekly pay periods or have different employees that get paid at different times during the week or the month. Some of you have employees that get paid weekly. Some of you may even have employees that get paid biweekly or even monthly, once a month. And the issues that we run into with that is that when you've been exporting out the time, you would approve it all, export it out, and you would take that time and import it into Timberline. And then when you would go around to your next pay period or pay group to do another export, all of the previous time that's been approved in here would show up in your export file again. And that would cause some headaches for some of you. And the tips and tricks that I would mention in the past to avoid some of that would be to filter on pay groups in your menu here. Some of you that have pay groups would be able to filter between weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, things like that, or hourly versus salary. The other option that I had given many of you is to work off these color statuses and understand that the only time currently in our current version that's going to get exported out is the time that is green, in a green status. So by simply unapproving time and turning it back into a blue status, it wouldn't show up in your export file. So many of you guys have been toggling back and forth between your hourly and your salary people. Also, when an employee is terminated and needs to be cut a paycheck early, this is also going to be very helpful, because now you can go in with the reassurance that when you route or promote a single employee up through the chain of command, and you approve that time and you export that one employee out of the system prior to doing the export for everybody else, when you go into your new export, labor export window, that person is not, that you previously exported out, they are not going to show up in your labor export view anymore. All right, so it's going to eliminate the need to have to toggle between these different payroll statuses, between approved and approved by payroll administrator and ready time, and it's going to minimize a lot of those mistakes from duplicating up people in your export file. So without further ado, let me just show you the new labor export view. I've got my date range selected here. We do have some time that's been approved. That's green. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on RP and go to the labor export window. The labor export window now is got some new filter menus up at the top. Okay, so the first thing that you want to always check when you come into your labor export view is the date range box. You can see here this date range doesn't match up with the date range that I actually wanted to export out. So I'm going to go ahead and take this time to go in and change that. Now to change your date ranges, you can come up to the top here, just click on the date range and choose from the from and to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this from 6/21 as my start, and I'm going to then change it to 6/27. All right. There's also some other filters in here that you can use to speed this up. We do pull over your pay groups in Timberline. If you're not familiar with pay groups, go into your help menu in Timberline or check with your consultant. That can really speed up the process and make things easier for you if you have different types of employees where you need to do multiple exports and whatnot. It's easy to filter on those here. Also, you can filter on certified class and also your payroll groups. So if there's a particular payroll group that you want to include or not include in your export, you can simply go through and uncheck all of the payroll groups that you do not want to show up in the export, and only the ones that are checked are going to show up in your filters menu. So I'm going to go ahead right now and I'm just going to apply these filters. And by applying the filters, you can see that I pulled up employees that match my filter criteria that I've selected at the top. All of these people are showing up here because we have time approved for them on our time approval screen. People that have been previously exported out or that do not have their time approved are not going to show up in this window. All right. I can also come in here and I can exclude certain people from showing up in this list. So I can go in and if I wanted to exclude someone, I can just go off and I can one off that way, or I can hit my exclude all button. All right. I'll just point out for anyone that's asking or maybe thinking, what does the settings button do up at the top? The settings button really is just your format window. In the format window, we have the different format views that we've already carried over from your current system or your current format view that I set up with you during implementation. Kevin Rabluski and his team have automatically, they're going to default that so that's all ready to go for you. You're not going to have to change anything up there. And then there's also this consolidate view for those of you that want a more consolidated export. This is more for people that want to see a single line item by job for their employee rather than more of a daily certified breakdown by day on all of their time entries. So these options, this is feature parity. This is stuff that's in our current system right now, but we've made it available here. So now, in order to go in and do this export, all I need to do is click on the big Export Transactions button up at the top. And by clicking on that, it's going to go through and do the export. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed, but that is much, much quicker than our old version of time export. You know, Kevin mentioned in his feature meeting about, you know, on the time approval and timesheet screens about the speed, the increase in the performance that we've been able to make happen with this new version that's coming out. And you'll notice that a drastic change in just even the exporting of the time here, how much quicker that is. And so that's going to help many of you out a lot. You can see that once we did the export, it put the link down below here. So you can see download file, and it's got the link. And when I click on this link, it's going to ask me, depending on the browser that we're using, whether or not I want to save this to my hard drive. I'm using Google Chrome right now. It just automatically saved that to my downloads area on my machine, and it provided me with the link right here to my export file. For some of you that want that changed in Google Chrome, you can actually go into your settings in Google Chrome and specify to be prompted, you know, on saving the file and where you want to put that instead of automatically doing it. If you're using Internet Explorer, you should have the pop-up button that'll come down, that'll pop up down at the bottom, just like it does now, where it's asking you to do a save as, and that you have another opportunity there to save the file the same way that you're saving it now by either using the default format that we have for our export files, which is date range. We always will put hh2 and then the date range in there for the export, or you can change it to whatever format that you're used to using, and then do a save as and save it on your network wherever you want. I'm okay with this here, and so I would be able to take this file the same way that we've always been able to do this and import this into Timberline. Nothing's changed there. So once you've exported the time, you'll go through the same import process into Timberline. Now, the big change here, though, is that now that I've exported the time out of the system, it's no longer in hh2 and available to me for export. It's been cleared out. All right. If I want to go back in and re-export out any of the time that's been previously exported, I have to roll that time back into the system. That's the mechanism that's really transpiring or taking place here to help avoid the errors of duplicating up someone's export. And so we hope that that's going to help you guys. The history here is where we're going to go and view that. This is your logs for all of the exports that you've previously done. So by clicking on the history wheel, we can see the date and the time in here, right here. And we can see who exported out the time. We can also see the totals, the employees. All right, so what I want to just show you very briefly here is how to undo or do a rollback in the labor export log. Previously, I mentioned that when you do the export, it clears the time out of hh2. It only clears the time out of the panel, so it's not actually taking the time out of the system. You're still going to be able to go in, see the time entries, report on those time entries. The only thing that you wouldn't be able to do after you export it out is do another export without rolling the time back into the system. So to undo an export, all you need to do under the export log is click on the undo button here. By clicking on that, it'll ask you for a confirmation. Are you sure you wish to undo the rollback on this export? You can see the pop-up here, and I would just click OK. Now that that time has been rolled back in, if I close this menu and I go, it'll take me right back to my export area where I have all of the employees in the system, and I can go now into the time approval screen, make my changes, and then re-export them out. Going back into the history will also allow you to download your file again. So if you misplace your file or lose a hard drive, or you can't remember, where you downloaded your export file, don't fret over that, because you can always get another copy of the file here. So this is located here. If I click on this, it's going to ask me where I want to save that. You can just go in and save that to your hard drive again. All right, so that covers the export history. I just want to close by saying that this labor export window will be made available towards the end of July. We'll be giving everybody a heads up on that. We're warning every one of you now in your labor approval panel or time approval panel. So just be on the lookout. Take the opportunity to go through and review the video. We'll be doing another class on July 23rd to cover these options in detail for anybody that signs up. So be looking out for the information to sign up on the new hh2 time approval and timesheet screen webinar, and then also the labor export window.